Thank you to Jane Collins for inviting me to speak here today. In my short presentation, I will introduce aspects of a larger research project that examines the distinct genealogies and unique properties of the theatre and architecture model. With its focus on the virtual model, this current project aims to develop two interrelated and hypothetical strands of inquiry. The first one ascertains the virtual model's unique capacity for world-making. The other isolates its performative and epistemic qualities. Both require a positioning toward the physical and virtual model to articulate their elements of interconnection and distinction. Equally, both aspects demand the model's theoretical positioning towards the real. Today, I will look at the virtual model and its relationship to the real through two recent case studies framed by questions around the virtual model's capacity for world-making or cosmopoiesis. In a pre-COVID era, in 2019 to be precise, the Japanese artist group Team Lab presented their immersive project Borderless at the Mori Building Digital Art Museum Epson in Tokyo. This immersive environment, driven by gesture and mobile device interactivity, comprised 10,000 square meters and brought together over 50 of their artworks in 5 interconnected sections to become one of the largest digital environments globally. There was no limit to the number of audiences, and at times one was alone. At other times, one was part of a kind of swarm, navigating the enormous space. Borderless operates on one level as a collage of the history of media arts, with its subtle references to seminal works of the genre, and at another level as an exemplar of virtual reality and augmented reality, as well as mixed reality, and their ability to create worlds and engage millions of viewers in a sequence of immersive worlds whose temporal and spatial complexity permits for the infinity inferred in its title, Borderless, to be realized. The encounter offered by Borderless is the audience's immersion into a visually and experientially seductive and compelling multisensory realm. Paradoxically, while technological advancement manifests at a very high level in augmented reality environments, the presence of the technology driving the immersive experience is now becoming increasingly invisible. The departure, quite literally, from the VR cave automatic virtual environment, towards ubiquitous handheld mobile devices and their open source VR apps has most recently given rise to experimental projects between the technology sector and performing arts companies. I will focus in my short presentation on two recent projects, the second of which was caught in the pandemic and, while completed, is, so to speak, waiting in the wings to be premiered. The World in Your Hands, Augmented Reality and Scenography. Pre-pandemic, in late 2018, Opera Queensland in Brisbane, Australia collaborated with Google Creative Lab KI in creating an augmented reality AI-powered prototype app titled Project Aria that promised to merge a specially studio-produced opera performance with a viewer's domestic environment, with the device being a standard mobile phone. In a technical paper on the project, the Google Creative Lab writes, Project Aria is an exploration in the emergent landscape of AR storytelling, asking the question, what would it feel like to have an operatic performance unfold in your own home? The virtual model's seemingly infinite memory and fluid architectural construction lie at the center of Project Aria. The world experienced by the viewer is a world co-produced by AI language and the viewer's choices as to where to position their device and which narrative strand of the performance to select. Google, according to the project's lead, Jonathan Richards, hopes that by, I quote, bringing the audiovisual art into AR via its R Core, which is an augmented reality platform for Android, The tech would inspire a new generation of storytellers to explore the possibilities of working with augmented reality. End of quote. Arcore operates with three main capabilities to enable the seamless integration between real and virtual environments, namely motion tracking that allows the phone to understand and track its position relative to the world. Secondly, environmental understanding that allows the phone to detect the size and location of all types of surfaces, horizontal, vertical, and angled surfaces like the ground, a coffee table, or walls. And thirdly, light estimation that allows the phone to estimate the environment's current lighting conditions. This is quoted from Google Arcore. Arcore's sophisticated AI-based recording system, called the Relightables, performs the volumetric performance capture of humans with realistic relighting, working with a musical and scenic 15-minute collage from Mozart's The Magic Flute. Character avatars were constructed using a technique called photogrammetry that involves mapping individual images of the performer from all angles into a photorealistic 3D model, recorded with numerous high-resolution cameras and taken from multiple angles, as you can see here with the sphere. These avatars are then integrated into the user's physical environment, thus providing the user with a personal opera experience in an environment of their choice. This project is still in the prototype phase and has not been released for commercial use, simply due to the extreme data read and data write speeds that exceed 450 megabytes per second, or about 4 times faster than a 2021 desktop computer. This collaboration between an opera company and a high-tech creative lab might be regarded as propositional, with its value in the concept of a tailor-made individual AI performance experience and a new way of storytelling that transgresses the borders between the actual and the virtual. Project Aria succeeds as well in moving immersive storytelling out of specialized environments, such as the cave, and into the domestic environment. The conceptual starting point of Project Aria can be found both in the real and in the virtual, and when activated, the performance blends both realms into the new realm of real-time augmented reality. In the augmented reality virtual model, the cosmopoetic or world-making act occurs throughout the opera's performance, whose narrative structure and scenography are fleeting, dynamic, and liquid. It follows that the augmented reality model typically constitutes both object and idea, akin to every model. Here, however, both object and vision are continuously evolving and, in many respects, impossible to hold on to. This reminds of Bergson's and Deleuze's concept of the virtual and its temporalities, and it confirms that the virtual model has its own reality, the reality of the virtual, whose counterpoint is not the real, but the actual. Current rising, entering the virtual model. In a 2020 collaboration between the Royal Opera House's Audience Labs, a newly formed Art Meets Technology hub, between technology developers Figment Productions and Story Futures, based at Royal Holloway University, the viewer encounters an enterable VR model world that aims to expand the traditional opera experience towards a fully immersive yet aesthetically pleasing and dramatically convincing environment. Titled Current Rising, funded by UK Research and Innovation and produced by Royal Opera House's Head of Audience Labs Annette Mies, this experience for 4 people at a time is described by Mies as a, I quote, sequence of liminalities, end of quote. Created using a game engine developed by Epic Games titled Unreal Engine, this short 15-minute piece employs a classical narrative structure and dramatic build. Its interactive user options are limited to a single moment in the piece. Inspired by Ariel's liberation at the end of Shakespeare's The Tempest, Current Rising draws the viewer into a dreamlike unfolding cosmos that begins with the projection of associative text and ends with a cityscape rising out of water and exploding into the air. The work, due to be premiered in December 2020 originally, is at the time of this presentation yet to open to audiences due to the pandemic. Its physical set is built on the Royal Opera House's second stage, the Limbury Theatre, and its technology, complete with VR goggles and a backpack-type computer hanging on a wall in the environment's blue-lit anteroom for the viewer to don before they enter the first of several virtual worlds. The director, Nisha Jones, says, "With Current Rising, we have been exploring the possibilities of VR to expand the idea of what an opera can be, both in the process of creation and in the audience experience. Here, the audience are the protagonists. They are inside the work, and their physical experience is a part of the work itself." In merging VR with a set of multi-sensory features such as wind, touch, and scent, Current Rising demonstrates the persistence of an artistic, aesthetic, and scenographic thinking and a directorial rigor that transcends what often can be experienced by audiences and can be frustratingly experienced as technology's dominance over the ideas and the concepts of a creative team. Aided by the pandemic's enforced distance communication, Jones, Mies, and the composer Samantha Fernando stress the collaborative nature of this piece, developed in many international Zoom sessions and with an emphasis on workshopping every aspect of the opera, be it the built set, the virtual experience, lighting, sound, voice, and movement. The work's model character manifests as emerging out of the virtual model developed in layers and layers of potentialities and built both digitally and in solid analog form. Only 4 audience members can enter the VR environment at any time through the Limbury's auditorium. Led onto the actual stage, the audience encounters an abstract set built on this very stage. The enterable white cube, with the opera's title sculpted into its form, presents first a physical transition into a real scenography built on a real stage. Once on the stage, the viewer becomes an actor or agent in the VR opera, while still physically being led further into the cube, from the entrance situation into the dressing room, with goggles and VR computer on one's back. Costumed, then, the viewer actor, as you can see here also with a mask, enters the first text-based world. Named the Insomnia Room by its creators, this world is comprised of literary citations from and around Shakespeare's The Tempest, by headlines and excerpts of documentary information about weather, climate change, and society at large in diverse large black and white fonts, resulting for the viewer actor to be immersed in a semantic cloud. From the concrete world of the text room, participants leave the Euclidean geometry of the white cube and rise, as the title succinctly describes, into cosmic worlds of atmospheres from day into night and from night into day, into rivers of color and shapes, and towards unstable and immensely beautiful horizons. A city structure seems to rise high from the river and is finally exploded, thus closing an overall metaphorical arch between creation and destruction. While the worlds unfold and immerse the viewer during the 15-minute experience, they do so according to a linear, classical Aristotelian dramaturgy of introduction, conflict or drama rising, resolution, and finally catharsis. Annette Mies explains that the experiential journey for the audience of 4 is indeed mapped out as a linear narrative that takes the group from the material entrance into the auditorium, onto the stage and into the physical set, into the immaterial, the virtual world, and back into the material world, exiting through the cube and from the stage through the auditorium to the theater's exit onto the street. In contrast to the blurring of borders between virtual worlds, between the real and the virtual, in Opera Queensland's augmented reality opera project, Current Rising employs traditional narrative and dramaturgical structures and a strict separation between the two realms. Yet, both projects are immersive to a high degree and both rely on the virtual model as its centerpiece and core. The modeling of space inhabited by avatars, as in the Magic Flute, or the modeling of uninhabited cosmic worlds, as in Current Rising. In both cases, they rely on the viewer's activity to realize the intended experience. World making in Current Rising is thus a collaborative project that is both performative and epistemic in that it produces knowledge. In Ways of World Making, philosopher Nelson Goodman claims that world making is always, I quote, a remaking, end of quote, of other worlds or elements thereof already in existence. Underlying Goodman's study into world making is his view of the art as a, and I quote, mode of discovery, creation and enlargement of knowledge, end of quote, therefore constituting an integral part of, as he says, metaphysics and epistemology. Linking world making directly with the production of knowledge, as Goodman does, implies that this act is not to be understood, or rather misunderstood, as copying of what is, but that its central creative strategies perform processes of, and I quote Goodman again, composition, deformation, and weighting actually, amongst others, that are related to reality but must reach beyond its immediate confines. In this understanding and extrapolating from Goodman, world making, as shown in the virtual and augmented reality artworks and performances introduced in this project, encompasses both construction and reconstruction, invention and assemblage, fact and fiction, and manifest translated into non-verbal symbolic systems of representation. Virtual worlds, examined here through two recent augmented reality and virtual reality projects, have come to be understood as products of strategies that construct loci autonomous from the actual or the real, but that own their own distinct reality or realness. Philosopher Olaf Wallenstein and visual artist Ku Jian confirm in a discussion on Ku's recent augmented reality works that, I quote, the virtual does not make place and physical location irrelevant, but rather asks for it to be, I quote again, conceived differently. Unique to the virtual realm is that a virtual locus carries infinite numbers of further or other loci within itself. Thus, it presents as unstable and rhizomatic rather than as a stable and linear body or entity, and any single virtual model is to be understood as one of innumerable worlds perpetually in a fluid motion. The process of world making through the virtual model remains forever unfinished and forever marked by potentiality. In this understanding, the future of staging has already begun. The future of staging is already in the making. Thank you.